Have you ever wondered what a completely shattered spirit looks like? It looks like a ghost shivering on the roadside, a skeleton hidden beneath matted fur, a pair of eyes that have forgotten what kindness feels like. For every dog cherished as family, another is abandoned, their trust broken, and their world destroyed. But this is not a story about despair. It's a story about the moment everything changes, the moment one person stops, the moment compassion refuses to surrender. Today, we bring you 3 incredible journeys from the very edge of death back to a life of joy. Prepare to witness what happens when a broken soul is given a second chance. Rebirth from a matted prison. Our first story begins on a busy, indifferent road, where the roar of engines and the blur of speeding metal formed a world that had no time for a life fading on its edge. There, amidst the exhaust fumes and the discarded trash, lay a tiny, trembling creature. He was supposed to be a proud Pomeranian, a fluffy, charismatic ball of charm, but the dog found that day was a mere ghost of that former self, an invisible stain on the hurried tapestry of human life. His once glorious white coat was now a filthy, horrifying prison. It was a solid, heavy carapace of matted fur, caked with mud, feces, and despair, clinging cruelly to a skeletal frame. It wasn't just dirty, it was an instrument of torture, pulling on his delicate skin with every pained breath, housing parasites that fed on what little he had left. He was so tragically thin. Every rib was a sharp, painful ridge beneath his skin, a stark testament to prolonged starvation. But the deepest, most profound wound was etched in his eyes. They were not just sad, they were dark, vacant pools of pure terror. They flinched away from the world, from any approaching shadow, utterly convinced that existence held nothing but more pain for him. Hundreds of cars passed. Hundreds of people glanced and then looked away. Then, one person stopped. One heart refused to be indifferent. One stranger looked past the filth and the fear and saw not a lost cause, but a life worth saving. In an act of profound gentleness, he was scooped up, his fragile body barely registering, and wrapped in the warmth of a soft blanket, perhaps the first true warmth he had felt in an eternity. He was taken away from the cold, unforgiving pavement forever. The journey back to life began at the vet's, under the bright, clinical lights. The diagnosis was grim, severe malnutrition, advanced dehydration, and painful, weeping skin infections hidden beneath the suffocating armor of his fur. There was only one way to free him, to save his skin, his entire coat. The very thing that should have been his pride had to be shaved away. As the heavy, dirty clumps fell to the floor, one by one, it was a profoundly symbolic act. It was as if he was shedding years of misery, neglect, and suffering, revealing a fragile, naked body that could finally begin to heal. In the safety of a foster home, he began to learn an entirely new reality, a new language of being. He learned that a human hand, once a source of terror, could bring a gentle scratch behind the ears, not a blow. He learned that a soft voice could mean comfort and safety, not anger and punishment. Day by day, meal by meal, he grew stronger. His frail body began to fill out, the sharp angles of his bones softening. And then, it happened. A moment that felt like a miracle. A tiny, hesitant flicker of his tail, a tremor. Really the first sign of the happy, hopeful dog buried so deep inside. Soon, that flicker of joy became a flame. The hesitant wag became a confident sweep. He began to play, to trust, and to love. As his new, clean white coat grew back, thick and glorious, it symbolized his complete rebirth. The little ghost from the roadside was gone, vanished forever. In his place stood a joyful, beloved companion, a living, breathing testament to the fact that no life is too broken to be healed by love. Grace, a journey to heal the soul. His transformation is a miracle of physical healing. But sometimes, the deepest wounds are not on the skin. but are carved into the very fabric of the soul. This brings us to our second story, of a dog named Grace, who had to travel over 600 miles to find her way home. When rescuers found her, she was a walking tragedy of starvation. Her ribs protruded, her hips were sharp, but her physical state was nothing compared to the prison in her mind. Grace was paralyzed by a profound, all-consuming terror of people. She was a master of self-erasure, of making herself invisible. She would press herself into the farthest corners of a room, keeping her gaze fixed firmly to the floor, convinced that to be seen was to be harmed. To be noticed was to invite pain. Years of unimaginable cruelty had taught her a terrible lesson. Humanity was a source of fear. Saving her was not a matter of food and medicine alone. It was a delicate dance of patience. Rescuers knew that a full belly wouldn't mend her shattered spirit. She needed a special kind of home, one with an endless, bottomless ocean of patience. And then, a miracle found her. A family, living hundreds of miles away, saw her photograph online. They didn't just see a scared, skinny dog. They saw a beautiful, gentle soul hiding behind a wall of fear. And they felt an instant, undeniable connection. They knew she was meant to be theirs. Before they even met her, they chose her name Grace for the unearned, beautiful, and freely given gift of a second chance they so desperately wanted to give her. When Grace first arrived at her new home, she was overwhelmed, still a prisoner of her past. The new sights, smells, and sounds sent her retreating into herself. But her new family understood. They didn't push or force. They didn't crowd her. They simply offered a quiet, steady, unwavering presence. They would sit on the floor for hours at a time, reading a book or talking in soft tones, letting her learn the rhythm of their kindness, letting her observe them from a distance. They created a sanctuary of safety, where she was never asked for anything. And in that space of unconditional safety, the thick stone walls around her heart began to crumble, bit by bit. The first time she cautiously took a treat from an outstretched hand was a victory. The first time she didn't flinch when they walked by was a milestone. And then came the moment of pure, unadulterated triumph the first time she cautiously, tentatively, rested her head on a lap. It was a monumental act of trust, a surrender not of defeat, but of hope. She was finally learning to trust. She was finally home. Today, Grace is unrecognizable. The dog who once tried to disappear is now the heart of her home. She is happy, healthy, and showers her family with a love as deep and as boundless as the ocean of patience they showed her. Her story is a solemn promise that every abandoned, terrified soul deserves to find their way home. Resurrection, a love that refused to surrender. Grace's journey from the abyss is inspiring, but what happens when a dog is so far gone, so close to death, that they barely look like a dog at all? Our final story is the most shocking, a true resurrection. It is the story of a dog who was, without any exaggeration, a walking skeleton, resurrected by a love that simply refused to surrender. He was a sight so horrific, most would turn away in disbelief and horror. He was a creature from a nightmare, a collection of bones loosely draped in a thin, black, diseased skin that looked like burnt leather. There was no fur, no fat, no muscle, nothing to soften the brutal architecture of his skeleton. His eyes were not just sad, they were empty, sunken pits in his skull, devoid of all life, of all hope. He moved with a slow, agonizing effort, as if each step was a monumental battle against death itself, a body already succumbing to the final call. He was so far gone, it seemed not just improbable, but impossible that he could be saved. But one man did not turn away. He looked at this creature of bone and despair, and he saw a life worth fighting for. In an act of profound courage and defiance against death itself, he scooped up this impossibly fragile frame, so light it felt like holding nothing at all, and took him home. vowing to fight for him. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a round-the-clock vigil. It was a war waged against the inevitable. His savior patiently, painstakingly, hand-fed him tiny amounts of food every hour, trying to gently reawaken a digestive system that had all but shut down. He gently bathed his raw, painful skin with medicated solutions. But most importantly, he spoke to him. He whispered promises of safety and love into the void of the dog's emptiness. He never left his side. He treated him not as a dying animal, but as a beloved child, deserving of every chance. For days, the dog lay motionless, a fragile soul teetering on the very edge of eternity. But the man's love was a relentless, unwavering anchor. And then, the impossible happened. A faint light flickered in those empty eyes. A few days later, in a moment that defied all logic, he lifted his head, slowly, miraculously, against all odds. He began to return to the world of the living. His transformation is nothing short of breathtaking. The sharp, cruel angles of his bones softened under layers of new muscle. Patches of new, black fur sprouted like new grass from his healed skin. And then, the dog who could barely stand, the dog who was resurrected from the grave, began to run. To see him now, a symphony of life and joy, chasing a ball with an ecstatic grin, is to witness a true miracle. He was pulled from the very jaws of death and delivered into a paradise of love by one person's refusal to give up. These stories touch a deep part of us, don't they? They show us the incredible resilience of animals and the extraordinary, life-altering power of human kindness. If you feel that connection, if your heart broke and then soared right along with ours, please help us spread this message of compassion. Take a moment to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you help these stories reach more people, inspiring more acts of kindness around the world and giving a voice to those who cannot speak for themselves. Be the one who stops. Be the voice for the voiceless. Consider adopting, fostering, or donating to your local shelter. You may not be able to change the entire world, but for that one animal, you can change their entire world. Because every life is precious, and a little bit of kindness, as we have seen today, can work miracles.